Welcome to episode number 108 of the Civil Engineering Podcast, the first podcast dedicated to helping civil engineering professionals succeed in work and life. While this is the 108th episode of the Civil Engineering Podcast, this is the first episode we are broadcasting via video on our YouTube channel, which we plan to do much more often in 2019. So be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel here. If you'd like to listen to any of our past 107 episodes of the podcast, you can visit civilengineeringpodcast.com. I am your host, Anthony Fasano. I'm a licensed professional engineer who practiced as a civil engineer, but eventually decided I wanted to focus more on inspiring engineers rather than doing the engineering myself. So since then, I've written a book called Engineering Your Own Success and have traveled the world helping engineers. And through this podcast, myself and my co-host, Chris Knutson, try to bring you information that can help you succeed in every episode. I've also had the absolute honor of authoring the American Society of Civil Engineers Careers and Leadership column for the past few years. Now, in this episode, I'm taking you with me to the corporate headquarters of Dewberry, where I will sit down with the CIO, Lisa Roger, and talk about the role that IT plays in engineering companies and that relationship between IT professionals and engineers. Lisa gives an awesome perspective that I think all engineers will appreciate, which is focused around value. So let's jump right into this one. All right, now it's time for our civil engineering conversation of the week, and today I'm excited to be here at Dewberry with Lisa Rogers, CIO. Lisa, welcome to the Civil Engineering Podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here today.
Yeah, I'm excited because we've done over 100 episodes, but we haven't really talked about the topic of IT, which, me practicing as a civil engineer for many years know that that's a very important relationship in these firms in terms of the IT professionals and the civil engineering professionals. So we're excited to jump into that. So Lisa, before we get started, just give our audience a little idea. I mean, obviously you're the CIO, but what does that mean in terms of your responsibilities here?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think everybody's aware of some basics like keeping the lights on when it comes to your information technology. Everything from your laptop to making sure you're access to the data. Do your phones work? Are you getting your voicemail? Are your WebEx meetings set up properly in your calendar invites? Are all of these things happening?
Right.
And as a matter of fact, when we don't get calls, we know we're doing our job well, when we're not being bugged. But all of that kind of maintenance of stuff you shouldn't have to think about, but are essential to getting through your day. So, and then more serious things like data integrity, security, and security from not what we all think of in the IT world around cyber. But also that has now bled into a much bigger definition with social engineering and even physical security. So often our scope is now broadening beyond just your basic, maintenance and hygiene around IT and infrastructure.
Yeah, it's interesting because I would think like the IT, industry or your job continues to get change and maybe get more complex day to day as technology improves and increases, and there's different threats and things of that nature. So I'm sure that keeps you on your toes.
Absolutely. Yeah. Always got to have your ear to the ground and looking for new enablers, disruptors, what's going on with our competitors, and what are our vendors providing for us in the way of technology. So yes, we have to be aware of that as well, and so it's a very complex role. And it touches the entire organization. Every facet of the organization is touched by IT, so it's critical.
One other thing in this regard that might be helpful for the listeners, just in terms of the size of the company and your department, just so they understand that. Could you just talk about that a little bit? Sure.
So here at Dewberry, we have 2,500-ish employees. We talk about number of people when it comes to IT and supporting the number of people. And then in our infrastructure, our IT infrastructure team, we have about 40 individuals that span from your help desk folks to folks that are helping with training and bringing on of new technology to infrastructure, data center, security, asset management, ERP. That's another whole team. ERP is your financial systems. That's helps you
Very
with
important,
managers with P&L and our accounting folks and making sure everybody gets paid, all that good stuff. So
slightly important.
Tiny bit. So that's our scope of when it comes to tactical things, categories.
Yeah, and I asked that because we did get a few questions from our listeners, which we'll talk about later, and some of them were, I think it kind of depended on the size of their company, some of these questions,
Absolutely.
of course, because, IT can range in terms of responsibilities based on the size of the firm, but we'll get into that later. What I want to talk about now, which is important, which is really one of the reasons that I'm here with Lisa, is because I've heard just from working with some people here at Dewberry that you're very different than someone who is typically in a CIO or in charge of IT responsibilities in terms of your philosophy. So talk to us about your philosophy in terms of IT.
I would love to, because that's kind of where my passion is. I did not grow up as your normal IT guru type person. I don't do gadgets, I have to have my own team. My famous saying is, I wish I knew an IT person when something goes wrong, because I'm not the person to fix the WebEx in the conference room when it goes down. So, but my background is more of business, chasing business, winning business, and executing business. I was a program manager and actually ran a large commercial cybersecurity program where we were selling. So I was on the road doing sales and executing business. So. And I've owned 2 companies as well. So that I come from that background of delivering. And so for me, information technology needs to be an enabler. It needs to be a partnership with the line and the business. We are here to help them win business, help them execute business. That's our job. One of the very first things I normally do when I come into an organization is lay 2 basic rules. One, everything we do has got to add value, and it has to do it in a way that enables business. And 2, you're not allowed to use the word no or policies when you're interacting with a customer. So in many ways, it's extremely scary for our IT professionals because they're used to relying on the word no, and the word can't do that because IT policy says you're not allowed. So, but what that forces us to do is listen to our business partners and figure out, well, what is your real requirement? It could very well be that I'm not going to let you do it the way you want to do it, but my job is to enable you and get you to where you need to do the quickest, most efficient way that I can. So, so my philosophy around what is our role in IT, our role is to be that bulldozer to make sure you don't need to call us because there's an issue, and that you have the tools, and again, we're here to enable you to win. We're here to enable you to execute flawlessly so that you can pay our salaries. So that's our job in a nutshell.
Yeah, that's great, and I appreciate that, especially from someone who worked as a civil engineer for probably almost 15 years, because a lot of times there is the struggle between the civil engineering professionals and IT professionals, for obvious reasons. I mean, engineers want the programs to work and have all the latest and greatest things, but as IT, you have a lot of things you're juggling. You're trying to keep up with everything. You're trying to cover everything. But I understand now, based on your philosophy, what I think makes you probably really good at what you do and makes you different than other people, because anytime someone understands how to sell business and understands that that's really the life cycle of a company, the bottom line, right? Because you can't do anything without your revenue. Then that can totally change your approach, right? And it makes you understand that you need to be able to facilitate business growth through IT.
That's exactly right. And it starts with the most basic thing that your mom taught you. You got to listen. You got 2 of these, 1 of these. So it's very important that you listen to what is it we're trying to accomplish here, because actually IT people in general are some of the most creative, smart, clever people you'll ever meet in your life. And if you give them the environment where they can use that creativity, you'll be amazed at the solutions that they can provide to business. Actually, it's a really fun evolution to watch an organization go from talk to the hand, sorry,
Right,
the policy
right.
says we're not allowed to help you with that, to having these sit-down conversations, even being allowed to leave the basement. And that was a big thing too. Usually in organizations, IT, you leave them in the basement and you slide pizza under the door.
Right.
You don't put them in front of folks. Well, when you actually get them out and have them go to the different offices and sit down with our business partners and watch them work, and watch their struggles, and then all of a sudden, the light bulbs start going off, and you can watch their, creativity and watch the solutioning happening. But it all of that liberty has to be there. All of that environment where they're allowed to have that conversation and where that exchange is an equal exchange. So there's that first part of just breaking down the walls and then creating an environment for success.
Yeah, no, that's great. And so I would imagine that you put effort into getting interaction between your IT professionals and the engineering professionals. Is that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I'll give you a case in point. We just, like many firms, recently went through a budget cycle. And where in the past, and this is true for a lot of companies, each different area was responsible for their own budgets when it came to what they needed from a capital perspective.
Right.
But for the first time, IT actually sat down with each manager and talked about what was going to happen next year. What is your growth going to be like? Are you going to be adding people? Is there any new customers you're going after this year? Are you doing something different that you didn't do before? So having just some basic questions that we had, very general questions that opened up the dialogue for the business partner to share with us, what their plans and aspirations were for the next year to see. And then for us, it triggered a bunch of internal questions. So instead of saying, hey, how much data are you going to use next year? Who knows how to answer that, right? But hey, are you going to be getting into LiDAR or drones or any kind of big data? Are you going to be doing more mapping? Are you going to be doing less of that? Is your customer changing from federal to state and local? Do they have different requirements? Asking business questions, we can answer the technical requirements from that.
Right.
But often IT in the past will have made mistakes of asking the business partner for technical requirements versus what are your business requirements. So we need to make data-driven decisions, but based on business requirements.
Yeah.
Business should drive technology. Technology should not drive business.
That's great. That's a tweetable, by the way. But what I like about this as well is that this is not a strategy that you can just say, oh, that's great, we're going to do that at our company, because it has to happen from leadership. They have to understand the knowledge of sales and how the business works, and I think that's important. And there's nothing against traditional, IT leaders, but many of them are very technically driven, of course.
They are.
Very program oriented.
Yeah.
And that's just the way that they were educated, of course. And so unfortunately they don't have the sales background and they don't understand how the actual engineering company thrives and works. And so I think you bringing that to the table is great. All right, so what we're going to do here is we got some good questions from our listeners.
Lovely.
And I'm going to go through a couple of them here for Lisa and get her insights on these. All right, so first one here, Lisa. How do you decide which new software will be implemented? Who has a seat at the table in the decision-making process?
Okay, fantastic question. Software is expensive. And all right, just to be clear, software is very expensive. And this is actually, from an owner's, stock owners, whoever owns your corporation perspective, often is the most overlooked part of the company. It is, I would say, a good 45% of our budget, our IT budget, is software licenses and maintenance.
Wow.
I think we have over 400 different products that we deal with here.
Wow.
So I think, for us, there's been this evolution of the customer needs, so we're just going to go buy it, we're going to deal with it on our own little island, and we're going to make it work, and maybe we'll tell IT it happened, but we got to get the mission done, right? To now, it's more of a partnership, and it's that question. Imagine half of your IT budget, but there's absolutely not one person running that whole program around software. So we needed to totally refocus where our efforts were and put talent that actually understood the engineering world into that segment so that we could have that crucial conversations with our business partners as to prime example was, hey, we need this, crazy XYZ scheduling software. Like, oh, did you happen to know we have an enterprise agreement with Microsoft Project, and we also have Primavera, and and you start going through. Could these things help you? And having that conversation, bringing in a vendor to do a demo, all of that with IT coordinating those enabling conversations, and again, critical conversations. What are the requirements so that we can solve the business problem in a way that you want to use, you want to be good stewards, right? We want to be good stewards, but you also want to use the power of the collective. So 2,500 people is a lot of people, and we have a lot of bargaining power with that. So yes, it's the relationship with the end-line person who's going to be using the product, but it's also the other critical part is the relationship with the vendors, and this often goes unlooked too. We're writing some big checks to these vendors.
Yeah,
having those relationships, everything from, how do we skin this cat better, getting them into that problem-solving mode, to what can you do for me today? So again, I'm writing a big check for you. Can I get some free training? Can you help enable us on a project? Help solution stuff.
And what do you have already? Like you said, what do you have already? Maybe we need better training.
Right. Is there a menu item we're not using that could open up the door and let us, all of that kind of stuff. So it's being that, again, that listening, that partner that will help enable find the solution. 400 products, obviously we're not an expert on 400 products, but we need to be skilled enough to be able to understand the requirements and help find the solution so that they can keep working and they're not the ones that are having to do that.
But that's something, in terms of the decision-making process, is that something that would get to you, and then if it's a big enough purchase of it, you would have to go to budget?
So I try not to be a roadblock, me personally. Yeah, obviously, if it's a big check, I'm involved. I like to be at the table with the vendor and getting the best deal and all of that. But if it's something new. But
I guess my question is, let me make it more clear. How do you avoid an engineer going and buying a program without, do you have some
I have controls now.
Okay. So there's some kind of policies in place that...
Well, we have technology in place that if you try to do something that you're not supposed to, I'm going to know about it. But in the past, that wasn't the case. And so they had their own, and a lot of organizations are set up this way too, especially when you're trying to run fast. You give your end users access to what we call the administrative world.
Because you don't want to slow them down.
Yes, you don't want to slow them down. But we're mature enough in our organization that we do have so many products, and there is a service catalog that they can pick from, which won't necessarily slow them down. And they're more mature in their organizations as well, so they already kind of have 97% of what they need. So it's the 3% that pops up once in a while. Well, we have a dialogue. It's manageable for us at this level.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And I think one of the takeaways there, regardless of what size your company is, if you're listening, is I like this idea of a catalog, because I think you're right in that a lot of times you have programs that will fit the need, but people don't know about it, and they see something that's new and shiny and they want it, right?
Yeah.
It's like I tell my young kids, Dad, I want this new toy. I'm like, but you have something very similar in your playroom you haven't played with in 6 months. Did you know that it serves the same purpose? Like, oh, really? I didn't know that, right? So I think that's important in terms of IT, because we can't just keep collecting things, paying for new things, and then not utilizing the resources that we have.
Exactly. And I guess the other element to that as well, sometimes you have customer-driven requirements that are not, an engineering whim, right? So you might have a local client that is requiring a very specific program that they already use, and you have to make that purchase, and you have to go there with them, but IT still needs to be involved with that. So helping to get a good deal, and even up front before you sign the contract with that client, can we negotiate them paying for it? Things like that. Often when you're in the line, you're thinking about the engineering requirements of getting a contract done. You're not often thinking about what are the IT requirements for me delivering to this customer. And that needs to go into your basis of estimate, needs to go into your cost analysis, needs to go into how much profit you're making. So again, what I'm trying to do is be that business partner to get the end business person to think total profit and loss, total holistic, what does it cost to do a program,
right,
or to deliver, so that we can address that up front and make smart business decisions.
And you can tell that Lisa is very business savvy because I've heard the word deal like 10 times already. I've never talked to a lot of IT professionals. I've never heard the word deal. I make a deal. So it's obvious that, you know, she's very focused on the business side of things. All right, another question here.
Sure.
How much do you rely on out-of-the-box software versus software you've customized in-house? If you are using some of the out-of-box software programs, how do you help employees acclimate and get up to speed on them? So
Okay, so commercial off the shelf all day long.
Okay.
So we want to go there as much as we possibly can. Whenever you do anything customized, that first off, its shelf life is short.
Yeah.
Who's going to develop it? Who's going to maintain it? When something goes wrong, the security around it, because I'm a security person at heart, all the red flags go off. You know, how is it compliant? You know, everything from 508 to cyber concerns around compliancy to just who's going to maintain it and how's it going to work, and you know, who's going to develop it. All of that can get very. You might have the perfect plan going out the gate, but 6 months down the road, when the person who developed it has moved on to another project, or you know, another company even, then you're left with this. What do we do with it? And then it often comes back to IT to figure it out. So if we can, off the shelf, if we can, again, that's where you have those crucial conversations to help figure out what are you really trying to get accomplished. Because trust me, it's out there. It's out there. There's something out there that we can enable it.
Yeah. And then in terms of like getting people up to speed on new softwares, what's that process look like?
Again, you have to have an awareness. For us, I will say we have a team of about 4 people that are focused on end user enablement. So everything from how do you use specifically, you know, our engineering software. You know, how do you set projects up appropriately? How do you get them going? But also, how do we train? We also take a very strong look at what are our internal relationships beyond IT that we can leverage, like our communications department, like our HR departents, our training departments.
So they can help out with some of the...
Whenever you, especially when you're doing an enterprise rollout of anything, it's a huge mistake for IT to take that on their own. So you need to use the power of the corporate collective in that case, and making sure that you have everyone lined up to help you to be successful.
Gotcha.
I'm not sure if I answered your question.
No, you're right. It's an effort that may not be strictly IT.
It's not.
In terms of training.
It's not. As a matter of fact, one of my favorite things to do, like for example, we're doing a huge program right here at Dewberry where we're totally evolutioning how we do procurement and how we pay our vendors. And so...
How you get deals.
Well, how we pay for the deals, and how do we track that payment, and all of that. And so one of the very first things I wanted to make sure was whatever we're doing, whatever this program is called, let's make sure it's not called the IT product. Okay, it needs to have, what are we doing? Well, we're doing procure to pay. We're doing P2P. Procure to pay is the name of our initiative. It's not, you know, the ERP engineering, you know, financial tool that's going to, that's like the kiss of death. I would say my big advice to any IT professionals out there, never name an initiative the tool that you're going to be delivering. Because what you want to do is capture the imagination of everyone involved.
You don't want to limit it.
Yeah, you don't. And then it's not all on IT anyways. Everybody's buying it.
Everyone's bought into it,
Yep, to the success of it.
What are, here's actually, this one is, you're not obviously one called a small firm, but this was a question. Many small firms don't have the advantage of an in-house IT department. At what point do you think an IT department is needed, makes economical sense, and what are some of the pitfalls if they don't have one and they should be aware of? I mean, essentially, we do have a lot of small businesses that listen to the show, and you know, what do you think is a rough size? I mean...
Yeah, that is a really tough question because it depends on what you're doing and how much money you're spending.
That makes sense.
So, in economies of scale. So, where can you apply economies of scale? Often, what you'll see, and even in my IT department here, I would say 35 to 40% of my IT professionals were engineers in the line.
Oh wow!
So you often will have the talent. within your organization, and you probably know this already because you tap them to get things done. When something, you go to Sally every time because Sally knows how to fix it, but that's not her job, but she does know how to do it, so you use her superpowers there.
Sure.
So it gets to the point where Sally is spending more than 10% of her day, or even probably more like 35% of her day doing IT work, then you might need to be thinking, okay, how much of this can I outsource? You want to outsource what you can before you make the investment in a true IT staff. So for example, bringing in some help desk support, you can outsource that. Bringing in server management and backups, you can outsource those functions so that you're not having a full-time staff to do it.
Right.
And then you have like maybe one person who's in charge of all that, and then it becomes an evolution. For me, it's a financial exercise, where you're looking at, what am I expending from an IT resources, and you have to be smart enough to capture that up front. How much of Sally's time to how much are we spending on outsourced stuff to, and make that evolution.
You have to track everything.
When you know what the cost of an IT professional is, and you can make that. So I'm very business oriented. So make that investment when it makes financial sense to make that investment. Now there are opportunity costs that go along with that that might not show up in your balance sheet. Things like the goodwill of having your own human being that cares about you, and that goes a long way. Where an outsourcing, that's a little more
having
distance.
someone in house that knows what's going on, like you talk, like with your own philosophy,
Absolutely.
like understanding the business and knowing all that.
Absolutely. So when you have a small firm, your leadership has to be savvy beyond just engineering.
Got it. And another question that I think kind of ties into this a little bit, and I think you may have answered this already. Someone was asking, like, what's the biggest threat to engineering firms in terms of IT? I mean, you talked a lot about security.
Yes.
Would you say that's, I would imagine
it's huge, and it's not just engineering. It's all over.
Everywhere.
All over. But I will say, because this is a huge passion of mine, when it comes to engineering and architectural firms and just engineering in general, it's all about the data. Big data, lots of data.
Yeah.
So first off, where is your data? That's the number one question. And two, how are you protecting it? These are your crown jewels. This is your intellectual property. So when it comes to cybersecurity, we often use the castle analogy of protecting your crown jewels. So first off, you need to make sure your crown jewels are in the most secure place in the castle. And then you have you have your moat, which is your firewalls that are watching everything trying to come in and out. You have your drawbridge, which you let down only when you control when the drawbridge goes up and down. You have your turrets with the guys with the guns, shooting the bad guys, taking out the malware when it happens, your antivirus software. So you have layers. You have your layers, your rings of security, and you want to make sure, and that's why I said it's so important to know where is your data. And then number two, data it's expensive. So, how are you, just like you're a good steward with making a deal or executing and flawless execution, you also have to be good stewards around data. So when you're done with the project, let's archive it, okay? Let's get it out of the data center. And again, good part of the castle where it's nice and secure. We don't want anybody stealing our intellectual property. But get it out of, so data has, what we'll call the slow area where you can keep it archived. We don't need to have fast access to it. But to do your job as an engineer, I want to make sure that data that you're getting to, you can get to super, super fast. It's processing super, super fast. And the more stuff you put in there and make it, it's like your own digestive system. If you're going to eat a cheese pizza, how do you feel after that? So we need to get the gunk out of the system so that we can keep it clean and running fast. And so part of that security is understanding, especially for engineering firms, because it's all about big data.
It's all about the data.
It is all about the data. But I will also say the second part that's most important, and I call it basic hygiene. We all have to practice basic hygiene. So we all shampoo and put our deodorant on and brush our teeth every morning. So let's not click on emails. Let's not click on phishing things. Our weakest link is everyone. So,
That's not easy.
And unfortunately, it's also our highest level of management. So, we love to celebrate when we win something, and we put a press release out, and we have so and so's name who won the deal, and then all of a sudden that becomes a target, and that person starts getting emails, right? Everything from vendors who want to partner with you, subcontracting firms says, hey, did you know I can help you execute this win that you did, to the bad guys who are going to now send you enticing things like, hey, I delivered your Amazon package, it's sitting on your front door. And you're like, wait a minute, what did I order? Click. And now you've just,
So the press release is like, come to our castle.
That's exactly what it is. And oh, by the way, we left the back door open. So, so
when the big threat is obviously the data.
Big data.
Big data is there.
And basic hygiene.
And the basic hygiene.
Two things.
Which is great. And the last question, which I realize this is like a whole other episode, but someone asked a question about it, so I just want to mention it here, is, artificial intelligence is obviously coming, and it's going to have an impact in our industry, of course. I mean, we're seeing stuff with traffic and automated vehicles, smart vehicles.
Right.
So, again, I don't want to go into detail on this, but in general, obviously this is going to have an impact on IT.
Absolutely.
Are there things that you are doing now, or like you said before, you kind of got to keep your ear to the ground? What does that look like?
Well, there's a lot of things going through my head right now, especially from our last conversation. Whether it's security or it's the rest of your infrastructure, when it comes to disrupting technology, artificial intelligence, anything new that you're bringing in, you need to have a good infrastructure to handle it from an IT perspective. So again, it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's, 511 technology or road sensors, or you're bringing in data, you're bringing in something new into your environment. You need to make sure your environment can handle whatever it is that you're bringing in. It's also helpful for engineering firms or any kind of high-tech firm where you have a specialized industry, that you have those engineering type minds within your organization, so that you can have that understanding of what's happening in the world. So, so when you're looking, you can understand: are we ever going to use that? Is this something that our customers would like? And you have to have those conversations with business leaders who are meeting with their customers every day, and they know what their customers are looking for. Sometimes our customers are behind us when it comes to technology and innovation, but sometimes they're not, and they're leading decisions around technology. So having that awareness, having that awareness, that's again a crucial partnership. But our biggest role is to be prepared for whatever happens out there.
Doesn't matter what it is.
It matter.
It matters. And engineers will appreciate this. You got to have a good structure. You got to have a good process. You got to have good guidelines in place.
That's right.
And then if you have that in order, as things come at you, you can flex and you can make adjustments. But as long as you have a good foundation,
absolutely,
you'll be much better prepared for anything.
Absolutely. It's key.
Okay, great. All right, stick around. We're going to come back here in a minute, and we're going to put Lisa on the civil engineering hot seat for a few questions. I hope you're enjoying this episode of the Civil Engineering Podcast on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel here for more podcast episodes, and for all of our Engineering Manager 80/20 Shorts videos, where we interview successful engineering managers and bring their strategies to you. Now it's time to jump into the Civil Engineering Hot Seat segment. All right, we're back here at Dewberry with Lisa Rogers, CIO. We had a really interesting conversation in terms of IT, but now we're going to switch gears and we're going to put Lisa on the hot seat and ask her a few questions about her own personal development. You ready?
Sure, let's do it.
All right, so first question, are there any specific rituals that you practice every day? For example, do you have a specific morning ritual or lunchtime ritual that you do consistently on a daily basis that's contributed to your success?
Yeah, eat the frog. So you do the hardest things first, right? And I make sure I do it every single day, and I try to get here early and go, okay, what's the thing that I don't want to do, and just get it done. Get it done. Eat that darn frog. And then usually I also prep myself the night before, and I'll look at whether it's the week or the night before. What do I have teed up for the next day? What do I need to do? So just to get yourself in a mental place, and then in the morning,
so
eat
when
the
you
frog.
come in and you can get going.
Get going, eat the frog. I know exactly what I've got going.
Right.
What meetings to attend. What do I need to bring to what value am I adding? All of that good stuff. Prep for that.
No, that's a great strategy, and you could think about that too in terms of like your engineering career. What I always tell people is if you kind of eat the frog in the morning, everything else that happens is more or less a bonus, and you can handle everything else. But you got that out of the way.
And by the way, that's a Mark Twain quote, just to give him attribute that to him. I didn't make that up. If you're not aware, but yes.
No, it is. It's a good strategy because we all know in engineering, and I'm sure in your line of business in IT. You get calls, right, all day. You have to put out fires. So
you have to be balanced,
right.
as I say, balanced on both feet, flat on the ground, be ready for whatever's coming at you. And just if I would say, especially when you can be under fire, it's really important to have like just an inner calm and whatever's happening to have that listening ear, and so you can get to whatever's going on really quickly, so you can get to resolution.
Yeah, and I think by eating the frog, it's easier because if you know your big things out of the way, makes you feel a little bit more at ease that you've gotten that done.
Exactly, like our time together today.
Exactly. Exactly. All right, what is one book that you might recommend to people, or just one book that you found to be extremely helpful for you in personal or professional development? I'm sure there's a bunch.
There's actually a bunch, but I will say First Break All the Rules. I wish I remember the author of it. The Jim Collins series is wonderful. Good to Great, Great by Choice, etc. A very interesting one, it's a forever read, and if you have kids and you've got soccer practice, I would say put it in the back of your car, and when you're waiting in the parking lot, you can just pull it out and read a couple pages at a time, is Team of Rivals by Doris Kearns. It's about Abraham Lincoln and how he surrounded himself with his enemies.
Yeah.
And so, I'm a very patient person. By the end, I'm like, fire them already, for goodness sakes. But you just, I'm a historical buff too, so I found it fascinating. So that's one that my kids get when they graduate from high school. The places you'll go and Team of Rivals. So
that's
skinny
good.
one and a big one.
All right, some good options there. All right, so two last questions. First of all, thinking back in your career in terms of managers that you've had, right? We always like to ask.
Right.
Not specific names, but if you were to remember one that was maybe your favorite manager that stood out for you, what was the reason they stood out?
All right, that's a great question. I actually took 7 years off to stay home and raise my kids. Okay. So coming back into industry was scary, and I had a person. Her name is Cynthia Mack, and she interviewed me at SAIC, and she looked at the things that I had done and said, I really think you could run a program for me. I didn't even know what the program name was, where I had just been in an interview with another person, I won't say their name, and who had looked at my resume and said, I don't even know if you interview well, but I'm not sure if I can even get you in front of our client because of your gap in service. So lovely karma story. Much later, I ended up running that very large program, and 90% of that other guy's revenue for his whole company was coming through my program, and he worked for me. But so I just little karma story, but yes. So she took a chance, and just her philosophy beyond that. It was she gave you enough rope to hang yourself, but she also gave you the liberty to do what you needed to do, and she wasn't afraid to challenge my thinking. So when it came to decisions I was making and asked,
like that?
Well, not at first. Especially when I was younger. What do you mean?
Remember
what
that?
do you mean I'm wrong?
Yeah.
Why are you questioning my decision making? But actually, I knew when I walked in there it was going to be an intellectual conversation, and it made me better. It made me think harder around our own personal biases, our own personal decision making. It was that check, but she did it in a way that was not threatening. That was. Then I knew it was going to be a safe place for us to have that dialogue. It wasn't punitive, it was developmental. So I was very blessed to have her.
That exchange was really valuable.
Absolutely.
Great. All right, so last question here. If you were to get into an elevator with, let's say, a civil engineering professional at this point, since it's a civil engineering podcast, you've been here now, you've been working with civil engineering professionals, and you had 30 to 40 seconds with them, and you had to give them some kind of advice in terms of their career, their development, what would that be, knowing what you know now and working in this field?
I would say, gosh, that's a hard one.
And it could be related to IT, anything.
Well,
it's based on your background.
No, I would say in life in general, I'm attracted to chaos, and so look for opportunity is everywhere. It's to your left, it's to your right. Find where things are swirling, and the minute the dust settles, that's where you go in, find the gaps, add value, and I've done that my whole career. And first off, it's super fun, and two, it's great adding value, and it's fun being in chaos. And then when you can make that better, just you look for those opportunities, and whatever you do, don't wait for somebody to tell you what your career is. And I would say follow your joy. So I call it the joy factor. All of our days are made up with things that we love and things that we hate. Make sure whatever your next job is, you're doing more of what you love and less of what you hate. Simple as that.
That's perfect. Perfect way to end. All right, Lisa Rogers, CIO of Dewberry, thank you so much for coming on the Civil Engineering Podcast.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Civil Engineering Podcast. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more video broadcasts of the podcast, or visit our website at engineeringmanagementinstitute.org for all of our free content for engineers. Until next time, I hope that you continue to engineer your own success.